One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to One Question, where we highlight executive leaders in college athletics. I'm here at the 2019 NACTA Convention, and I'm joined by Gerald Harrison. Gerald is the Director of Athletics at Austin Peay State University. Greetings, Gerald. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, looking forward to it. Glad to be here.
You've been on the job for 10 months now, right? Not even a year, but in 10 months probably could feel like 2 or 3 years when you're talking about taking on a leadership role such as the athletics director chair. You've been in college athletics for 18 years, spent time at Tennessee, at Duke. Your last position at Duke was Senior Associate AD for internal over football. When I used to talk to new head football coaches, I said that job has got to be like a train going by you real fast, and you got to hop on because now you got to drive the train, right? But you got to hop on while it's moving. Tell me about 10 months on a job in your first time as an athletics director.
Well, it's a very similar situation. The difference is when you're with a football coach, you're dealing with one singular focus where you're just trying to win games. You want to recruit your staff, recruit your student athletes, whereas as a director of athletics, you're figuring out your budget. What can you do from that standpoint? Who can you hire? Can you hire anybody? Do you have to deal with the staff that you don't know? So I consider it like the analogy I use. Some people always use that thing about drinking water out of a fire hose. Well, when you're an athletic director, you really just open up the fire hydrant and you're drinking the water out of the fire hydrant. And so that's the challenge there.
Tell me about what you found. When you get there, you're excited about it. That honeymoon period probably lasts not really long.
However long your press conference is.
It ends at the press conference. What were some of the initial challenges that you found when you got there?
Yeah, I think the first thing you find out quickly is that you got to get to know your constituencies. And if you think you know by the search firms that you're dealing with and talking to the university president or the search committee, but they really can't paint the true picture. But those first few calls you get from a donor, a major donor, or you get an angry parent or a student athlete, and all that stuff comes in the first day. And they say, "Oh, you're the new AD. Well, let's talk about the following things."
Day one, huh?
Day one. It didn't, it was tough. I mean, here's the budget. Oh, we got to balance the budget. Oh, we need to buy this, or your football coach needs more scholarships, or you don't have any money to build a new facility. And that stuff comes really quickly. I would say, from talking to colleagues that I've been with, the first years in AD is probably the toughest year, period. And if people talk about a honeymoon, people don't really care that you just started. They want results pretty quickly.
You're now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're the next guy. Let's go.
Let's go. Here's what are you gonna do?
Right. That's interesting to me. Like you mentioned, day one, you come off the press conference, so you move your family up there. You get there. Okay, now we're working. Does the administrative assistant put a list of okay, Gerald, here are the 5 top things that you probably need to respond to in the next 24 hours? Because how does that?
Well, here's what happened with me. So I had the press conference. Before the press conference, I had 2 meetings. I remember I had 2 meetings, and one was with the director of development. And the director of development will give you a list of people. Hey, you need to contact all these people on your first day because they're number ones, we call them. They're very important to the program. So you do that. Then you meet with your executive staff, and you're trying to meet them one-on-one to get to know them, or meet them as a group to say, hey, here's what I expect. So by the time you do that, then you meet with your head coaches, starting with football, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball. You just try to run down and try to meet those guys. And if you don't meet with the big 3 first, they feel slighted because you don't want the basketball coach to feel like the football coach is the upper hand and vice versa. And in that conversation, they start telling you things that they need or what they don't have, or they can't win a championship if you don't. So first conversation. My first conversation with our head basketball coach lasted 2.5 hours, and we had everything on the whiteboard from scheduling to contract to salaries. And I couldn't name his kids and he couldn't name my wife. It was just that, but it's that kind of conversation.
It is. It's interesting to me. 10 months, like you mentioned, people say a whole year. Do you ever feel comfortable in that 10 months? Do you always feel like there's a fly buzzing by your ear that you can never relax? Tell me how that's been.
Candidly speaking, no. I don't think you ever feel comfortable. I am adjusting to my town in Clarksville, and the people have been really good, so it's not that. It's just, but when you say feeling comfortable, it's like you almost know what's coming next, and that's not the case, because everything we're doing right now is still the first. This is my first summer, so now I'm dealing with summer school budgets and making new student athletes coming in and facilities in the off season. So it's the first. So I think you don't get comfortable. One, I don't know if you ever get comfortable, but I know you don't get comfortable until you at least done it once. Like, I'll be better next August or this August than I was last August. And I think you have to accept that.
Right. Now, you worked for a couple of elephants when you talk about athletic directors and talk about the people who you've mentored and who you work with and for. Tell me about some of the things you've taken from them that when you're around somebody for a certain period of time, habits, you kind of trade habits a little bit. Tell me about some of the things where you've seen yourself how to make a decision. You refer to something you've seen some of the people you work for do.
Well, it's great. I have a unique perspective because I started off in football. And so I learned from Philip Fulmer, who's a Hall of Famer. And I saw how he made a decision. Coach Fulmer never got rattled. So one thing I want to take away is when things are rough, the seas are rough, that I try to stay consistent for my staff, just like he stayed consistent for us. Now, he probably caught a whole lot of shots in the back, but he was always consistent. So that's the one thing I took from him, and he's a great mentor for me. When you talk about an athletic director standpoint, I'm fortunate to work for Stan Wilcox, who was the deputy director when I was coming up through the system at Duke, and I reported to him. Stan was details, and unflappable. I mean, unbelievably calm. I mean, he was not just calm, but he had a way about himself that made you know that it was going to be all right, but he was tough with that legal background and mindset. And then I worked for the Godfather, Kevin White, and everything anybody ever said about him is true. He never lied to you. He'll tell you what he feels and how it is, but his perspective of the whole picture. And he used to always say, you got to look at the entire picture. And he talked about the politics of it. He never hid that. Some ADs, if you talk to them, they won't talk about the politics. The first thing he talked about was the politics, because politics are reality. Fiscal management, compliance. He would talk about the transactions and how there are too many transactions to not put an emphasis on compliance. So one of the first things I did was strengthen our compliance department because that message that resonated in my head. So I've been very fortunate between Philip Fulmer, David Cutcliffe, who at Duke, and Kevin White and Stan Wilcox. I've gotten a lot of my I'm not like one more than the other, but there are pieces of all of them in there mixed in with a little bit of Harrison family sarcasm.
I've heard Kevin White say, I'm going to tell you exactly the truth, right? You can use it how you want to use it, but I'm going to give it to you exactly as I see it. What I've heard about you is you tell people what they need to hear in a good way. Talk to me about that, about when you have to talk to somebody of reality of a situation, tell somebody about their blind spot or something like that. Tell me about that part.
I think I got that part from my dad. My dad's been a high school and college football coach for about 45 years, and he was always honest with his student athletes, and I saw it. And it's kind of my thing. I don't want you to go around thinking you're perfect. And sometimes that happens, especially in this generation. You get younger folks coming up. They feel like nobody ever tells them this is not acceptable or this is not right. Whether it's as simple as, why are you wearing highlighter toenail polish and open shoes on a job interview, to, really you don't know what you think you know. And I just find a way to do it, and I try to use analogies and metaphors and show them that I care. So it's one thing to have somebody come in your office and you sit across from the desk and you give them, hey, you got to do better, and that's not the way to do it. I've always found it better I'm going to come around the desk and sit with you, and I'm going to talk to you because I want you to know I care about you. Now, this is going to hurt. And I will tell them point blank, this isn't going to get it. You're not good enough. And in unfortunate situations when I've had to terminate people, it's been very similar. It's been, hey, I told you what we had to get done. We didn't get it done. I love you. I think you're great as a person, but I may not think you're great for our institution. And you got to have those conversations, but it's all meant to build people. Even when you're having tough conversations, hey, you're not going to be the next athletic director until you do AD. You may think you're ready. You're not ready. And you have to tell him. Kevin White was great with saying you're not ready. He's Irish and he's tough, and he just says it.
Right.
There have been jobs I've gone for with I said, I went in his office and say, hey, I want to be the AD. I want to go for this job. And it hurt, but he'll say, no. Now, what Kevin did not care about is your feelings in the process. He was like, no, that's not it. And I found myself telling friends of mine who are peers that I've come up through, and they're like, hey, Gerald, I'm going for this job at this Power 5 place. And I go, you've grown. You've done the following things, but you're not ready. And here's why you're not ready. And you give them factual situations and take the time to do it. And that's what most people don't want to do. Most people just want to tell you that you're not good at something and then let you figure it out. I'm going to tell you that you're not and give you some options on how to figure it out.
I'd imagine your friends and colleagues and family and people close to you really appreciate that about you, right?
I think so. It's funny. I hear it from them, but it's not anything that I try. I don't think of it as something I try to do or a technique. I think of it as just who I am. But I've gotten some great, letters from people, or people say, just a minute ago, somebody saying that the impact that you have on their life, I never thought of it that way. I just thought I was being honest and having a Gerald conversation with people.
Doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, but it's funny. I was in a wedding this weekend, and that same thing happened. Somebody came up to me and was like, you told me X, Y, and Z, and I've done it, and I appreciate it. I didn't like you when you said it, but I appreciate it. And that's kind of where I am, I guess.
Where you are, including that Harrison family sarcasm, like you said, right? So I wonder, Senior Associate AD for internal, right? With the path you've come up, you're an AD now. Do you find yourself involving yourself with whatever your habits were in terms of an athletics department?
I think you worry about it a little bit more. You think about it a little bit more. No different than if you're a quarterback guru. You hire a quarterback coach, but you're going to watch the quarterbacks a little bit more. But one of my things is letting people do. If I hire you, I grill people through the hire process. Like, it is a day long, whether we're hiring for an intern, a GA, or for my CFO position if you recently hired. You're going to go through the ringer. So if I feel like I'm comfortable enough to hire you, then at that point, I got to trust you to do your job. And so I'll tell you my expectations or what I want done, and I give you a shot to do it. And if you prove that you can't do it, then we got to have one of those tough conversations. But I'm not going to look over your shoulder and say this or that. I'm just going to lay it out there. It's funny. When I was at Duke, I started this thing called the Open Door Initiative, which provided minority students with opportunities to internship at a Power 5 institution at Duke. You paid for housing and whatever and brought them in for 8 weeks. One of the students that I had at that time is now, I just hired her from Notre Dame to come to Austin Peay to be our chief of staff. And I had my first I had an OVC meeting, the big spring meetings the other week, and she put a notebook together, and it was phenomenal. Like, it had tabs and stuff. And I said to her, man, this is great. She said, well, you don't remember, you know why it's great. And I go, no, I mean, I just feel like you did a good job. Somebody told you. She said, when I interned from you, you gave this back to me. You gave a notebook back to me 3 times telling me it wasn't good enough. And for one thing I've learned that details matter. And I've taken that with me, and she's gone from Elon to Notre Dame and now the chief of staff at Austin Peay. That made me feel good. But that's kind of my leadership style.
That's an excellent thing. You've mentored people, so many people, and so much quality information to a point that you don't recognize that that's your own work that they're presenting to you. It's great. It's great subconsciously. Like, this is excellent right here. But you don't recognize that you were the one that started.
And that's really what it was. I had no clue exactly what was going on.
I'll wrap with this question here. This has been a great conversation. In 10 months, how do you debrief and how do you evaluate yourself? It's probably ongoing and continual. Tell me about how you do that.
Well, I'm probably my own worst critic. And so I constantly evaluate and overanalyze some things. And where we've had some opportunities where people have said, from the president to other people, great job. This is what we're looking for. And I feel like, yeah, but we could have done this. And so what I'm looking at right now is going through and starting in August. And the things that I'm going back through all my notebooks and things that I mentioned that I wanted to work on. And did I touch every one of those things? And if I didn't touch it, is there a reason I didn't? And I want to write down the reason, and I'll put it on an Excel chart, and it'll say, let's say I wanted to do some rebranding in the gym because I thought the branding was outdated. Did I do it? why didn't I? If I didn't do it, why didn't I do it? If it was resources or whatever. If it wasn't something that I couldn't, control, then that's a mark against me because I'm the leader. I have to fix those things. And I think the great mark of a great leader is being able to say, I didn't get that accomplished, and we'll take a hard look in August. I own everything. I have a retreat in August, and it'll be great. We're going to go in the mountains and talk. But it's going to be all about the what we did and what we didn't accomplish since August 13th, 2019, and what are we going to do going forward in 2020.
Is it just did I do it or not do it, or is it okay, we started this process, it's in the works, do we feel good about that, or are you just...
It depends on where it is. I'm pretty much matter of fact, though. So if I said, now some things are ongoing, like we just started an annual fund. I won't know the results of that for a minute. But the start of it was a goal, so we got that done. But if it's something that we could have gotten done, then I'm going to kick myself about it and figure out the best way to get it done pretty quickly.
What about the release, the debrief process? Like at home, do you breathe? And
it's funny. I was crazy. I got married and got an AD job in the same year. But my wife is the best thing that ever happened to me. And so I know people say that all the time, but I was always wound up in the work. And I didn't go home. Like, I put the lights off in the gym because I was in there. It was a rap song, you weren't with me when I was shooting in the gym. I was in the gym. But she has allowed me to come home and now want to cook on the grill more and sit around. And that's my Zen moment. You sit, I will sit on the back. I'm a country boy. I like to sit on the back porch, cook some on the grill, make some crab legs or something on the pot outside and just relax, listen to some good music, and that's my time. But she has allowed me to take it, which I've never taken it before.
Well, that's an excellent thing, Gerald. Congratulations on marriage and your
Thank
AD
you.
job, right?
Appreciate it.
This has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Podcast.
Anytime.
That was Gerald Harrison. He's the Director of Athletics at Austin Peay State University. He's been on the job for 10 months. And, of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.